my son Daniel and I am Tracy Jones, are going to discuss PTSD from different angles, both from civilian life and from military. He is a returning Iraqi vet, and I am a survivor of child sexual abuse. And the common theme here is how certain aspects of our lives draw us right back to where we were in any given moment under trauma. So just prior to April 2019, Daniel was put in the VA hospital for approximately a week because he was suffering from
anniversary PTSD
and things that happened in
Solder City,
April 4th, Bloody Sunday. Y'all can look it up. There was a documentary made about it. We both have issues. Misremembering is a word we're going to use a lot in here, because when we go back and we find the actual dates, we find out that although our dates were close, they were moved forward or moved back, and I guess it's a way of the mind trying to protect itself, or just shutting down and just saying not now, for both of us. For me, certain smells, certain dates,
right, that's enough,
will cause me to be taken right back to it was happening at the very moment that certain aspects of my life happened. Now, this is not a for me, this is not a session of putting responsibility on the crap in my life. This is about talking about something that people need to hear is a lot more common than what they are led to believe. It's something that's very shadowy. It's treated as if there's something wrong with the victim versus the perpetrator. There is something wrong with the corporation of the person who is victimized by the corporation or government or whatever, when in actuality it becomes very much embedded in your day-to-day life until you're able to both recognize it, name it for what it is, and then transcribe that information into more positive parts of your life, so that when the trauma hits in whatever form it hits, you can take a breath and not be traumatized in a panic attack or hospitalized or whatever else may happen because nobody wants to talk about it and you feel like you're your own person. I guess I'll give it to your story.
Okay. In my case, my problems are, or issues, because not all of it is entirely problematic. When you describe something as a problem, you are describing it as an entire negative, which actually prevents you from accepting it. For me, it's twofold. It was both military and general life circumstance. I was, back in 2003, 2004, I was in Solder City, which is essentially a suburb of Baghdad. And this was where Bloody Sunday happened. If you look it up, you will find that roughly 65 casualties. And casualties does not necessarily mean dead people. Of that 65, the common number is that 8 people actually died that day. The rest were injuries, some more catastrophic than others. But that was a day that a lot of people were supposed to be going home, and instead of going home, they got sent to Fallujah, and that was roughly the point where that side of the theater kicked off. And it's all interconnected and a lot more than we have space in this video to get into. Shortly thereafter, after I got sent home on a medical discharge, my dad died. And this is where there's some issues of misremembering, because when I think back, one side will be more prominent at times, and the other side will be more prominent at other times. And it has to do with where the mind emphasizes details. Some details will be more prominent, other details will be less prominent, and it has nothing to do with importance to you, it's importance to the shadow, as Carl Jung put it, your subconsciousness. As for me, the song Ground Control to Mr. Tom triggers me with my dad, because that was the last song that I listened to with my dad when he was on his deathbed. And so that puts me back in that place at times. And it's no particular version, it's actually that particular phrase sometimes. The commercial, which is popular with everyone from National Geographic to the History Channel to general TV. There's not so much particular smells or anything like that. I share that with my dad, that music is very important. I remember songs like that. As far as the military was a very big part of that side of my life. But my dad, I have a lot more time in general with, and so it's two great big holes in my life that really need filling in, and that's a challenge. That's part of why I'm doing these videos and why we opted to sit down and have this discussion. Compare notes, share them with the world. Because very little of this is actually done. There's a lot of clinical research, but clinical research is sterile. It's privatized, and that's not a very big help for the public, to be completely honest. It helps with certain people understanding it, but those certain people aren't necessarily the ones that need it understanding.
This morning on Facebook, there was a meme that came through, and in California, they want to make pedophilia a sexual orientation. And seeing that this video is our opinion, it's our experience, it's our version of things that many people have suffered through, deal with on a daily basis. To see something of that nature be made so accepting in this world, that a child could be a victim of somebody and the law protect the person creating that new victim, was disgusting in ways that I can't even begin to share. I have 3 children. I have a tribe of many families with many children. And I'll tell you right now, if somebody would walk in and touch one of my children and say, well, the law says I can because it's sexual orientation, would get them buried someplace. And probably in pieces. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if I ever go off on somebody harming a child, because of the fact that I, as a child, I wasn't beaten and I wasn't punched around. There is 1 or 2 instances where I was abused physically as a child, but the sexual molestation went on for years. And it wasn't until 1978 that I finally got out of it. And you're talking approximately 1973 to 1978. And to know that somebody had the right to do that is disgusting. And it's no different than when our vets come back and we know from what we've seen on TV what they're seeing and how bad we look at it and see these bodies that are being beheaded, being treated as if there is nothing more than a meat bag, but they're having to clean up the mess, they're having to see it day in and day out, that the 2 PTSDs of either side, the civilian or the military, is any less important, is beyond anything I can comprehend. And when our politicians who sit on their tail ends in DC or any state capital or in any office that they own that we pay for make decisions on things they know absolutely nothing about, or as my son says, that are from sterile studies, once again, is disgusting. They have no fact to base it on. And when they say that, well, you should just get over it, the mind doesn't work that way. You can't go in with a scalpel and cut out experiences. We don't even know how the brain works. They can say what they want to say, but then they turn around and say to do what the brain says would take a skyscraper that we can't even begin to imagine the height and the breadth of. So today is a broad overview of things that we want to talk about, and we want to show to our friends and total strangers alike that in your dysfunction you're normal, that the normal comes in the fact that all of us are suffering in one way or another over certain circumstances. You don't know how fragile a person can be. You don't know what can set them off. The horrors of war or sexual abuse or seeing or hearing an explosion or a car accident or a person maimed, and how that's going to affect them for the rest of their life. And we're taught to sit back, shut up, and not discuss it. And in saying that this is normal, unfortunately, those of you who are going to see this, there's going to be some that go, you're full of crap and you don't know what you're talking about. And there's going to be those, oh God, another whiner about PTSD or sexual abuse. And then there's going to be those that are going, well, what's wrong with making pedophilia a sexual orientation? Or how can hearing an explosion or seeing somebody maimed cause that? Well, I can tell you right now, I was 5 years old when I saw a little girl hit by a car, thrown in the air, and to this day, I can see that. Just having this conversation just brought that realization back to me. So, I'm 55. This year, I turned 55. That was 50 years ago. What do our grandparents who went through World War II, World War I, and Vietnam, and Korea, and Panama, and the Falkland Islands, and, you know, depending on where you are in the world, all of those apply to you. Who am I to say that you were in a car accident and lost a family member, or you got a phone call or a visit from a police officer that your family member is no longer part of your family in the living world? And why is it that somebody can tell us how to grieve and when to stop grieving and how to get over it? All of these things are being told to us on a daily basis, and we lost. And we don't have any idea of how to grieve, because I don't know about you, I live payday. I can't pay a therapist. Those people who offer and work their butts off to work their schedule on scale pay or the VA are so overworked, and the demand is so high. Once a year, if you get in, you're lucky. If you get more than 15 minutes, you're doing great.
Now they're telling them that they take too many breaks.
And now, yeah, this morning, another wonderful meme. So, you know, Facebook will be mentioned on here because there's some stupidity there. But some politician sitting on her derriere in Washington State made some snide comment about how nurses take too many breaks.
Clearly somebody who's never been around the medical profession at all.
And this family at this location, and we do live in Mississippi, by the way, we respect our first responders. We respect those people who choose to go through what it takes to get educated and become a professional in any field. So we want to get this conversation started, and we want people to know that, hey, payday to payday, we have these problems. The very rich have these problems. Civilians have these problems. Military have these problems. Unfortunately, religious people, as we've all seen in the papers, every religion, not one particular, have these problems. And nobody wants to talk about it because it's a hush-hush.
It's uncomfortable.
And we want to blow the door off that so that everybody knows that there's somebody out there that's listening, and that they don't become, with the military, they actually have statistics. 22 vets die every single day from suicide because they can't handle what they saw. We see the suicide hotlines posted everywhere because our kids are killing themselves over bullying, over trauma, over family conditions that they don't know how to deal with.
Recently, there was a vet who went to his VA and blew his brains out in the parking lot to call attention to the fact that he was being ignored.
And when they did the research, they found out how many times he'd asked for help. So we're going to stop that here today, just for the fact that we want to open the door so you know that these are coming, and you have to deal with the fact that we have bad rural internet connection. So they're going to come in an untimely manner, and as life's experiences allow us to sit down together, because my son does live about 2 hours from here, so we get together periodically and we'll put these together. He'll be putting some together from the military, and they're going to teach me how to do it from the civilian side, and see how, if we can't get people at least talking about it and knowing that they have a shoulder if they need a shoulder.
These problems won't go away just because you don't talk about them. It's like the monster underneath the bed. It may or may not be real, but you will never find out either way if you don't ask the question and share the experience. It's real on one level, it's not real on another. But this is the nature of what I just recently learned about UPG, Unverified Personal Gnosis. What's real to you may or may not be real to another person. The simple fact is that the other person cannot fully grasp what's going on with you, but neither can they deny that it's going on with you, or that you lived it or experienced it on some level. However, this is equally true for the other person's life story that you can't appreciate if they keep it to themselves. Only by coming together can we learn just how much we have alike and just how much we are different.
That's it for right now.